p.m. So we will call the Hudsonville Public Schools Boards of Education work session for Monday, November 27th to order. First up, we have approval of our agenda. I have a motion to approve.
I move that.
Support.
Motion from Mark, support from Andrew. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, first up, we have recognition of visitors and hearing of people present. Robin.
Our first speaker is Gwen Snoy.
Good evening. I'll email you the NEA's agenda from 2019. These radical steps are in place now in public education, and I accept that many leaders and administrators are heavily influenced by the NEA, by universities, by the Democrat Party, and mainstream media. These forces demand conformity to leftist thought, which disavows capitalism, heterosexuality, certain races, patriotism, the Constitution, traditional morals, God, and religion. At first I thought you didn't know that teacher activism, disrespect, and lack of integrity were occurring in places in our district. Now I've concluded that either you don't care or you feel helpless in dealing with it. HPS has always held students to a high standard of being respectful in words and behavior, but now we're experiencing teachers and curriculum that compel speech and compel thought. This policing of speech and thought assaults the religious freedom and the personal liberty of our families. I realize that my employment with the district is ancient history, but the distance lets me clearly see the displacement of the board. You slip from being the leaders and the authority in the district to an expectation that you will always affirm whatever the staff and admin put before you. You are now shamed for interacting with the community. It seems you've forgotten your critical role in championing local control, advocating for parents, students, and our community as a counterweight to the union and political dogma. While it's somewhat true that people don't trust the board, it's more accurate to say that many do not trust the school. On November 1, I emailed you 20 examples of teacher activism. We value our teachers, but as employees, they do not have full First Amendment rights in the school. We value our teachers, yes we do, but we must hold them accountable. Please establish impartial policies that honor all of our families and our community. And as you hold Dr. Vanderjagt accountable, and as he holds his staff accountable, we'll remove activism from our classrooms and hallways and restore trust and harmony within Hudsonville Public Schools. Thank you.
Mindy Van.
Today, the board begins the evaluation of Dr. Vanderjagt in his role as superintendent of HPS. They're tasked with objectively reviewing his performance in many areas. I do not think Doug puts the community's best interests first. I believe his actions instead put an emphasis on what those outside of Hudsonville will see. Millions of dollars spent on a field house with extravagant extras such as a $330,000 scoreboard so we can have the best. Dr. Vanderjagt is very concerned with how HPS measures up against other districts, but enrollment is actually down. People are leaving instead of coming. This is despite the addition of the field house, new signs at every building, PBIS implementation, and the social emotional learning within elementary classrooms. All of the families on my street chose to leave. Doug has proven that he is excellent at hearing what parents have to say, but he is unable to actually listen and follow up with any action steps. He is a chameleon, changing his approach, wording, and ideas to suit whomever he is trying to soothe. Dr. Vanderjagt has not improved upon what matters most, which is student morale. Students' mental health continues to be talked about but is not put in priority. What if discipline and respect, both within the administration and the student body, had been put front and center instead of coddling individuals' emotions? Would there still be students vaping in the bathrooms and parking lot each day? Would there still be fights in the hallways, locker rooms, and cafeteria each week? Would there still be teachers using their classrooms as a platform for personal opinions? In all honesty, probably, but they wouldn't be as obtrusive as they are right now. Dr. Vanderjack is laser focused on the perspective of how HPS compares to other districts in regards to fancy buildings, class offerings, and other materialistic avenues, but continues to miss the big picture, our students. Top of the line facilities don't replace quality materials and compassionate teachers. Hudsonville used to be a district with high standards where students valued and respected each other because it was modeled for them by teachers, but it has succumbed to updated buildings that house people focused on themselves instead of others. A major shift happened when Dr. Vanderjack and his current administration were put into place. He has led HPS away from our previous student-focused path to a new direction that has introduced division among students and staff, values emotions over logic and reason, and has put an emphasis on what we have instead of the well-being of HPS students. Previously, people were drawn to this area because of the values that Hudsonville stood for, but now they choose to leave. That should speak volumes about the current administration. We want a leader. We need an individual who can stand for something rather than someone who simply pays lip service to parents and community members. We need a leader who understands what Hudsonville was built on and will fight to keep it that way. Dr. Vanderjack is not that person. It is this board's job to remove Dr. Vanderjack and find a person willing to stand for the values that have built the foundation of this community. You each took an oath of office to serve this community, and it is best served with the removal of Dr. Vanderjack. Your actions, or lack thereof, speak louder than words. Nick and Greg, as the newest members and the ones who campaigned on your strong conservative values, I hope you practice what you promise.
Andrew Robinson.
First, I want to thank each of you for your sacrifice and your heart to serve this district and the community. I'm sure there are more fun things to do on a Monday night than to be here and do this, but you choose to be here. So thank you for what you do, and thanks for doing what you do. Secondly, I've been attending school board meetings for most of the year. I've been able to get to know some of you and interact, and I can tell that you're all good people and you're all here for the right reasons. Although, Dawn, you did make a comment about bald people at the last work session, so I have to keep my eye on you now. But seriously, nobody here is perfect, and everyone has made some mistakes except for Robin. In September, Andrew, you said something that really stuck with me. You said, I wish it didn't take a tragedy like 9/11 to happen in order for us to be unified. At the last work session, I was disappointed that some collaboration on enrollment data between a couple board members turned into a much bigger deal than really what it needed to be. The reason it turned into a bigger deal was because of the lack of trust and unity within this group. And at the end of the work session, Ken said something that I thought was spot on. And for the record, I don't always agree with everything that Ken says, but I thought that he really emphasized an important detail when he emphasized the importance of this group becoming a unified team. He used the word team, and that was very important. This group's been together for almost a year, if you can believe it, but it's not a cohesive team yet, although I think everyone wants it to be. Being a unified and cohesive team does not mean that you all have the same ideas. It's actually the diversity of the ideas in this room that make the board that much better, and it's a positive thing because it helps you to understand different perspectives. It could be a blind spot for other people on the board. It's not my place to tell you how you should function or how you should work with each other, but I really encourage each of you to come together and commit to a 2024 goal of being a unified, high-functioning team, and one that has each other's back. It's going to take change from everyone, not just certain groups of people. I've had a job where I had 7 people who thought they were all my boss, and I had to try to make them all happy. I started that job with a full head of hair and came out looking like this. So this unity is something that I'm sure would be helpful to Dr. Vanderjack, although he's doing a much better job of keeping his hair than what I did. But when you do that, have that unity, you set Dr. Vanderjack and his team up for success, so that he can set his team up for success of principals all the way down to the teachers, and then our students reap the ultimate benefit. A unified board is really what we need, and we have the people right here to do that. Our community needs this, our district needs this, and I can't tell you what you should do to get there. That's something for you to discover and work through together. Maybe it's apologizing for mistakes that you've made in the past. Maybe it's more transparency from some going forward. Maybe it's more grace from others that are going forward. But I hope you take this challenge to heart. Make 2024 the best year of Hudsonville Public Schools yet. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have discussion items, and we're starting off with our early childhood center bids.
Briggs, go ahead.
Thank you. So this, this renovation work is, in the middle of the building. It's really the last big project we have for the, bonds that were voted in 2019. It involves remodeling the current wrestling room into a multi-purpose room, movement room, and a cafeteria, taking the current cafeteria, making it into 2 classrooms, taking some central storage space that we're using for offices and making them real offices and real storage, just instead of just being as it is now, they're just old locker rooms, so making that space better. And then the alternate here that's listed as alternate G1 provides for remodeling and remodeling space nearest the old tennis courts, new pickleball courts, adding 2 exterior restrooms right there, and then changing some doors, basically get rid of some old doors and making replacing the doors on that side of the building. So questions I get when I present bids: did we have good bid participation? We did, especially for a project this size. The average, and sometimes averages aren't great, but the median is 3 on the categories, except for one category that we have sole source. So on a project this size, that's pretty strong. It is within the budget that we establish. When we go along, we look at the various stages of design. We have 3 stages, and in our design development stage, this project came within 5% of that budget. So with prices fluctuating up as down as much as they are, we felt that was strong, as well as this, we do have the funds available in the bond to do this. So I hit that pretty quick, because I know there's a lot on the agenda tonight, but our recommendation is to approve the contracts, which does include alternate G1 for $1,005,501 to the listed 12 contractors.
So after tonight, we'll bring this to the board in December for, ask for approval for the bids. We wanted to discuss them tonight so that we can move forward with some questions that you may have. Again, this is reallocating the wrestling room into 2, a new cafeteria and we call it a movement room. And then we'll take the current cafeteria, the 2 classrooms, so we'll have additional classroom space over at the ECC. And then it's fairly popular, I don't know if you've been over there and played pickleball, but maybe an opportunity to then have access to restrooms as opposed to those that might want to go around and ask to use the restrooms or have porta john. It just looks like have access to that. So that was an alternate bid, but it fit within the scope of the budget. So that'll be our recommendation pending conversation tonight on the 14th of December.
Where are we at in regards to the budget? Did these bids come in under or right
So-
at budget, or?
5%, we established a budget during design, and the bids were 5% over that level. So,
Within the scope, but not within redesign, or the alternate, for example, wouldn't be a part of it if we were out of scope with the budget.
yeah. Yeah, we had the funds available, just as we go through. It's too far past the original formation back in, it was basically 2018, when we were establishing these budgets. So with all the bump ups and everything, we establish a new budget as we go through with OAK, and we were 5% over that budget. So we felt that was acceptable for,
It's all
to make a
within,
recommendation.
it's all within the 19 bond.
It is.
Oh, yes, we have the funds.
We're
We
not,
have the,
we're not tapping sinking fund or
No,
anything. It's
we have
all
the-
within the 19 bond.
we have the funds available in the bond, in the categories. We're not borrowing from technology or some other category to do this.
And we really stayed within the scope of the bond for this project, knowing knowing that there were other things that they might have wanted to do in the building. We stuck within the scope of the bond to make sure we stayed within the budget.
Targeted start and completion.
They could start, because we have, one of the first areas we're gonna touch is the current wrestling room. And, they could start in there in January. We're planning to move them over Christmas break to the new facility, new high school, the area beneath the field house. So they could start touching rooms in there, it'd be demo, but they should be able to finish, late fall. It'll be about a 10-month window,
Okay.
which was part of we structured it that way in a bit because ACC never really shuts down. So we're working around a lot of programs there. And also, part of the favorable pricing is that the contractors don't have to do all this work in the tight summer window. So there's some then, but they'll really be working, they'll be doing a lot of work in March, April, May, and then they'll continue the same pace of work through the summer and finish up late fall.
Part of the goal is to try to get them into the wrestling room, which we cannot get into yet until we move them over to the high school. But try to get some of this done so that when you get summer, that transition for the cafeteria can take place without displacing students. And as to Pat's point, not only the favorable bids, but the volume of bids help because of how we faced it at the time.
This is primarily gonna be, is it the northeast part of the building? Southeast.
So right next to Tech, if you were to pull into Tech off of
Yeah.
School Street,
So are they impacted at all? Is that, or-
there's some storage that's being impacted, some demolition to try to increase some of the storage there. As our tech department and district has grown, our technology department's space has not. So it's the same size it was before, we were 1-to-1 as an example.
yeah,
So
it
that's
seemed
why-
pretty tight when I stopped by there.
It'll be not as tight, but it's still, they're not getting a huge building, but we are increasing some storage, some locker rooms that weren't being used anymore, reallocating the current bathroom with exterior access versus hallway access that was being used, so we're repurposing some areas and getting pretty creative in there.
Yeah, so for that exterior restroom, will they be able to access those from inside the building, or?
They have to walk outside.
Okay,
They still have restrooms inside around the corner, their staff restrooms.
just thinking like keeping the community separate from students when there's school going on and all that.
Yeah, if
so-
you go into those restrooms from exterior, say you're playing pickleball on a Tuesday morning and school is going on, you do not have access to the building by going through there, but we can put timers on the doors so they're accessible.
Pat, on the bid, there's a base bid and then there's a column that says alternate G1. What is that?
So the alternate includes the exterior restrooms, because we weren't sure how
Okay.
favorable our pricing was gonna be. Includes those exterior restrooms and, replacing a couple doors right on that same side of the building right there, facing the pickleball courts, on what was basically the gymnasium.
So everything in the column for G1 is the alternate, that if it didn't fall within the scope, we kind of can mix that column and still take a low bid on the rest of them.
Okay. And then some of these bids are really close, like there was one I saw, there's like a $200 difference.
Yeah.
Have we worked with some of these vendors and?
Yeah. So, good question. We do, post-bid interviews, and during that time, one of the first things we ask is, did you remember this? Did you remember this? Did you get this? Remember means get that in your bid. Did you include that? And so, yeah, we have those conversations with them. Lee and I usually get into mechanical and electrical. You can see the spans we have there. And, both vendors have worked with OAK in the past and, had favorable, they're performing well for them, and they've got good reputation in the community.
So like, for example, on bid category number 2, the one the green one, their base bid was lower than the second one, but yet under the alternate G1, that bid was higher
So-
Do you combine them then?
Yeah, so with JK, their base was lower,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so total, and I've got that in another worksheet. They should be lower in total.
That's, to answer your question, yes, the lowest total is the low bid.
I've got a spreadsheet that does that. Yeah, their total is,
So then it's only about $200 more.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but JK's performed well for us on some other big projects. Good experience with them.
Thank you.
Will be the low bid unless there's a reason they missed something in the bid packet after, once they review the bids before it comes to the board, they review to make sure they didn't miss anything.
Yeah, I just remember one other interesting note on the general trades on the top one. The second bid of the 4 on the alternate side, they're only had a $1,600 upcharge. The others were significantly more than that. I didn't know if that was a typo or, I mean, you're not going with that bid anyway, just, that seemed a bit off compared to the other bids.
With general trades, there's a good chance they may have missed something in the scope of the bid.
Okay.
They
But
actually,
if they go through the lowest bid and find out that they've covered everything, go from there.
yeah, they actually asked us on the way out to reread, and when they heard that Nugent submitted their base at 118, they were like, oh, okay, we know we didn't get the work.
Oh, okay.
Are they required to have more than one bid? Cause like on number 8, there's only one bid.
Yeah, so in the past, we've worked on controls since, at least since I've been here, 2015, and we've had a couple different providers, and so it's more now of a controls integrator than it is an installer. So we decided to sole source that category. So when we put the bid on the street, we said, ControlNet is they are the base bid. So that tells the bidder community that we have decided as a district, we had a lot of conversation as administration and board. And I would say up to 2 years ago. So that was pretty active, and we decided as a district that the best course was to stay with one integrator, and that integrator has done solid work for us.
If you think about your house and you have a thermostat and you build an addition, you don't wanna go with a different brand that can't communicate with everything. So the controls, are spec'd in a certain way so that they do match from a district standpoint, and we don't have 10 different systems running 10 different buildings.
Put together 10 different ways.
Put them in 10
Yeah,
different ways.
that's.
You can't do that with general trades, with paint, electrical, those are different components, but the control systems are spec'd specifically for that control. If there were 2 vendors that sold the same system, that would look different, but there are not.
You know, Pat, with all the injuries that come from pickleball nowadays, do we have an obligation in the community to put up a med center? Or at least a medical tent?
Maybe from time to time,
Okay.
or at least a stretching tent, yes.
That might alleviate some.
All right, any other questions for Pat?
Just a side note, not specifically about this, but the bid process. If I recall correctly, in one of the most recent legislative updates, were they repealing or changing, the requirement that if it's a government bid, that there were certain,
Prevailing wage?
thank you. And that's to take effect next year, is that what I recall?
Yes.
Do you see that having an impact on our bids?
Well, with this anticipated award date, no.
Okay.
We'll be done before that effective date of that law.
The bids going forward, that's
We
gonna
had a
be,
bond issue that we were halfway through, and we had to go through bids next year, the following year, it would have a substantial impact.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, next up is our trip request.
We had an additional trip request that, I think we just forgot, but there's still 20 kids that like to go. It's for the winter drum, it's winter percussion, to go down to the World Finals in Dayton, Ohio. I believe our, oh, come on, can't help me out, flag, guard, the winter guard, thank you. The winter guard is already going. This was they missed this group, but they still want to go too. So, similar to the other request for out-of-state travel, it's the week after spring break. They would go and come back. Any questions?
Do we have a required student to chaperone Rachel, out of curiosity?
Every, I would say, sport and activity looks different, from tennis going up north for a competition, band traveling to Detroit. Looks different. A lot of times it depends on how much you trust your kids to be, and how many chaperones you need, and how many parents want to go. Sometimes you have a lot of parents that want to go. You head out of state and go to Florida in January or December. Very nice.
Any questions on the trip request? All right, hearing none. Next up is our superintendent evaluation, and Dr. Vanderjack has requested that we complete that in closed session. So the board will vote and we will go into closed session. For those that are in the audience, when we are done with Dr. Vanderjack's evaluation, we will come back out and the scores will be read, but there will be nothing additional on the agenda, and I cannot say how long we'll be. You're welcome to stay, you're welcome to leave. All right, so we will go into closed session. So, Mr. Penhall.
Need a motion?
Oh, I need a motion to go into closed
So
session.
I'll move to go into closed session.
All right. Support from you? All right.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, yes.
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 Yes. All right, we are now in closed session.
Please take your name, thanks for the.
Okay. You're going to the other,